I think it's easy to have this expectation that mentors or leaders are going to be these perfect, flawless people, and it's never the case. So at 15 years old, started working at Target. About 6 months in, they made me one of the youngest pharmacy technicians that Target had ever had, and then eventually became a certified pharmacy technician and then a supervisor. So while I was at Target, we were using this medication flavoring system called FlavorX. And it would take something like a really nasty seizure medication and make it actually taste palatable. And so I was fascinated by this concept. I would go to the website, I would see that they had positions available. So I just decided I'd give it a chance and apply for the job. And I got a call back from Kramm, who was the founder and CEO of the company. He invited me in for an interview. At the end of the interview, he said, I want to give you the job. You'll be the 50th employee, and we're excited to work with you. Kenny and I hit it off right away. I think we discovered very early on that there was a lot that we had in common. Kenny started his life in his parents' pharmacy. He was this pharmacy technician, same thing, super young age, and we totally related to that passion. It just didn't occur to me that he was going to be so influential in my life. I started working at FlavorX in that call center supervisor kind of a role. Pretty immediately, I had this opportunity to kind of go where my interests lie, as long as it was going to help the company. And that led to me approaching Kenny in his office and saying, hey, I've got this idea, let me pitch it to you. Kenny is saying, all right, let's work on this, let's work on it together. That really kind of deepened our relationship. We all at the company knew the story of Hadley, Kenny's daughter, who had cerebral palsy and a lot of health challenges that drove him to invent FlavorX. I got to know that on a different level when I had this Siberian Husky that I grew up with, Bandit, this incredible dog that went everywhere with me. And right around the time that I started at FlavorX, she became arthritic and started having some mobility issues. And then eventually, within that year, developed bone cancer. And there was nothing that they could do for her except load her up with pain meds. So we made this difficult decision to put her down. And I was just devastated this entire time, distracted at work, like really, really hurt. And Kenny, we jumped in his car and we drove to his house, and I got to meet Hadley in person and just sort of see this incredible bond, this love that he had for her. I knew that this was some kind of a turning point for me. I get kind of emotional thinking about it right now, seeing Kenny's life in this beautiful young girl who has overcome so many challenges and survived through so much. That was Kenny's why, and he was basically pushing me to discover what my why was. When we had to put Bandit down, Kenny was not specifically saying, hey, start a pet company, but he was saying, this is a turning point for you and you need to recognize this. At the lab at FlavorX, I could take time and sort of tinker with whatever I wanted to do. That kind of fostered this idea, I can actually develop this into a business. I can take this heartbreak that I felt in losing Bandit and really turn it into something that can make a difference. It was around that time I realized pretty clearly that he was actively struggling with a substance abuse issue. Kenny was forthright and explained that he had had some legitimate pain and had had some clotting issues in his leg, and he had been prescribed these opiates and found that it made him feel really good. And dealing with all the stress of the company and dealing with all those challenges, all of a sudden he just needed to take it every day to get by. In 2013, I had finalized the formula for what would become RestoraPet and did a field study with the product that did really well. And so I reached out to Kenny and decided that we would do this as a 50-50 equity split. I thought at the time that Kenny was clean. We were on a conference call actually, and it became really obvious. Kenny was slurring his words. It just was extremely upsetting for me to see that. So I told him, as heartbreaking as this was, I said that I would walk away and we would just fold the business if he didn't get clean. I think Kenny really had this turning point, and pretty immediately cleaned up his act, started doing some detox, saw a counselor, did everything that he needed to do. and now really jumped back into the business. And he was the old Kenny. I mean, this was the guy that I had worked with 10 years prior. Things were really growing. Sales were increasing month over month consistently. We got some potential investment opportunities, and I got married in 2016, and Kenny attended the wedding and was just extremely happy, and that was the last time that I saw Kenny. Kenny had taken a weekend away at this like bed and breakfast kind of thing, and there was a hot tub. He had gotten in the hot tub, and he had had an exposed like lesion where the bacteria from the hot tub got into his bloodstream, and he became septic, and it just passed away right away. And it was, you know, I'll never forget that moment. Just brutal. I just was completely lost, but I just had no idea whether or not the business could continue. Kenny had always talked about how he had this irrevocable trust for Hadley, that she would be taken care of for the rest of her life. And I didn't find out until I was talking to Shelley, Kenny's wife, shortly after he passed, that there was no trust, there was no money. And so it just kind of congealed from me that I needed to drive this. I needed to take Kenny's place and become the CEO, and somehow find a way to move forward. So I worked with Shelley, and we were able to form this trust and put some equity aside specifically for Hadley to ensure that she will be provided for. Kenny was a flawed person for sure, but he was an incredible genius, really, and one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, maybe the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. Had I not had Kenny as a mentor, I really don't know where I would be now. Certainly RestoraPet wouldn't exist. I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have Kenny's influence.